Welcome back, everyone, to Car Ray Rob, where I'm Ray.
And I'm Rob, and we want to welcome you to our podcast. Say hello to my little film.
Hey there, it'll be just a little while till Ray and Rob spit their spittle. Come on, check out of the hospital. So grab some of your best peanut brittle. This will be a darn good transmittal. And say hello to my little film.
All right, guys, welcome back to Say Hello to My Little Film. I am really glad to be here. Rob, are you? Are you happy to be here today?
I'm always happy to be here.
Well, that's good. That's what we do this for. This is episode 22.
22.
We are almost at the end of the year.
That's true.
We've almost been doing this for a year.
Where did this year go?
It went into the catalog, and if you haven't seen the catalog, go back and listen to the catalog. There's some good stuff in there.
Absolutely. We want to see those old numbers go up a little bit higher. You know, we always get them up. We got great episodes. If you haven't been here since the beginning, you need to catch up.
Yes, and this is my episode. This is my turn to present you with a movie you've never seen before.
Now I'm not happy to be here anymore. I think I'm gonna. You know what?
Oh.
I'm calling in sick. Can I do that right now?
No, I
What?
can't do this by myself.
Why not?
This is a two-man show.
I don't think that's accurate.
It has to be. That's
You
the
could do a
format.
one-man show.
I could do a one-man show, but not like this, and that not to this format.
Fine. Since I know you can't live without me, we might as well do this. So you might as well tell me, what do you got?
What do you got? What do you got? What do you got?
All right, Rob. Well, what I got is the oldest movie we've ever seen. It's from 1952 because I like the
What?
oldies. You like the more current stuff.
That is
I'm
not-
sending you back in time.
That is not accurate at all.
No, it's not. You like more old stuff than me. But this is the oldest movie, 1952.
Okay, well now I'm getting super interested.
This movie's black and white.
Oh my! You're
I'm
going to recommend the
presenting-
first black and white movie we've ever done?
You're welcome.
Oh my god!
You're welcome.
This is Bizarro World.
Yes. All right. So I guess the
You've got hair
backstory.
again.
The backstory to no, that's not true. The backstory to this selection is, as I said a couple weeks ago, on my recommendations, I watched Once Upon a Time in the West.
Yes.
Absolutely loved it. Like, it's still rattling my brain that I need to go back and rewatch it. But it rekindled a Western thing, which had also been
Ah.
rekindled because I had started playing Red Dead Redemption 2.
As did I.
Got you to play
We
it.
were
And
both-
that story is amazing.
Yes.
That's a movie in and of itself. And so I'm like, I'm going back through some of my Western catalog. And I found one remembered one that you hadn't seen. High Noon.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah,
Gary Cooper.
Gary Cooper, right? Yeah, it's super interesting because my little backstory. My dad loves old westerns. and
Sure.
I used to, when I was young, I would wander in, to the living room or wherever he was watching TV, and they'd be on TV, and so I would catch bits and pieces of a lot of different old
Right.
westerns. So little caveat, I may have seen pieces of
You
High Noon.
might remember a part or two
And,
when
right,
you see
as
it.
I'm like, I might have a vague childhood memory of watching this, but as far as beginning to end, as an adult, anytime in my recollectable past, no. So we're going to allow it. I'm going to allow it.
Good. It barely
excited.
passes the rules.
Okay.
It might pass rules. We're not sure.
It might, exactly. I might go with that. Like, maybe I never did.
We're
see
going to
it.
fill in some
We're
gaps
gonna
though
fill in
either
some
way.
gaps, though.
So
Yeah. Okay. That's
I think
interesting.
I do think you're going to enjoy this movie. Like I said, so it's 1952 High Noon starring Gary Cooper, Grace Kelly. There's a young Lloyd Bridges in this movie.
Wow.
I only know Lloyd Bridges from Hot Shots.
He's
And Hot
only
Shots
known
Part
as
2.
an old man.
Yeah, old, wrinkly,
Airplane.
hilarious.
Come on, man.
Yeah,
Airplane.
true. I definitely remember Airplane. But even then, still much older. And here he's not a comedian in this movie at all. Like so it's really weird to see him just straight.
That way I could
like,
see
playing
that.
straight.
I could see that.
So, but High Noon is usually it's usually in the rankings of top 10 westerns of all
Sure,
time.
definitely.
It's kind of known as redeveloping the genre a little bit at that time.
Yeah.
John Wayne called this movie the most un-American thing he'd ever seen up to this point.
Marion said that.
That's what he said.
He had the guts to say that.
He sure did.
That's super interesting, actually.
Yeah.
Like, what this is like these types of movies are literally what, modern masculinity kind of build their archetype on, are movies like this. So it seems odd to me that this would be so un-American.
Yes, I'm really going to be interested to talk to you about why he called it that, and kind of the discussion around that. I think it's my interest. I definitely think it's fitting just this time of year and everything. So it'll be very interesting to talk about that. The movie is essentially shot in real time. It's not like a one shot or anything like that, but it's like it's basically they catch wind. Like Gary Cooper has caught wind that this old killer, like guy that vagrant of the town, is been released from prison and is heading back to seek some revenge against Gary,
as they
do. And he's 90 minutes away. The train he's on is 90 minutes away, and this is a 94-minute movie.
Sure.
That's what I mean. So it's like there's always a ticking clock in the background showing you like 15 minutes have elapsed in this movie, and in real life, and there's 45 minutes to go till hour 15 minutes till he gets here.
As long as the train's on time.
Yeah, as long as the train's on time. So it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool in that way. But yeah. This marshal has to do what marshals have to do. There's some other aspects to it that I'm going to say for you to kind of say for the discussion.
Fair
but
enough.
Really, really, really enjoy this movie. Can't wait for you to see it. I think you're going to like it too, but we'll have to see.
Well, yeah, no, I'm excited. I'm your Huckleberry. I'm gonna watch this movie.
Oh, I was just joking.
No, I wasn't. I wasn't. So yeah, I'm excited to see this movie. I'm excited to kind of, especially with some of the stuff you told me about Marion Wayne, if you will, Mr. John Wayne, talking about the un-American nature of this film. I'm curious what would make him say that. So I'm very excited to watch this movie. So I think that's what we're gonna do right now. If you have not seen High Noon, then I recommend you go ahead and pause this podcast and do that now while Ray and I scurry off to do that. But we will be right back, and we are excited to let you know what we think. We'll be right back.
Ray and Rob are currently watching The Film. You may be also watching The Film. If you're not, then you're listening to me say that Ray and Rob are watching The Film. They'll be right back when they're done watching The Film.
All right, guys, Rob and I are back. Rob, before we get going, talking about High Noon, first of all, did this meet the rules? Did you remember any of this movie?
I didn't. I really didn't. I didn't. There's
so we
still
can
that
continue
possibility.
on with the podcast.
Yeah, there's still that possibility that I did see it as a child with my dad, or at least parts of it. But if I did, I don't remember it. So clean slate.
We have a fresh take.
Clean slate, fresh spin on a retrospective review. Here we go.
Okay, on our 1952 movie, our clean, fresh take. All right, so Gary Cooper, Grace Kelly, Lloyd Bridges.
Yep. Lee Van Cleef. Introducing Lee Van Cleef.
So, what would be a great starting point? I mean, let's talk about the beginning.
Yeah,
I mean, sure. I like the entrance. I kind of, been kind of telling everybody, Once Upon a Time in Mexico's kind of got me back into this Western bug.
You mean Once Upon a Time in the West?
Once Upon a Time in the West. Sorry,
I know what you meant, but I wanted to correct for the podcast.
That's what you're here for. Once Upon a Time in the West, and there's, the beginning of Once Upon a Time in the West is epic. That 7-minute beginning. I feel like there's a mini version of that.
Yeah,
in this.
Sure. Well, being 1952, it's well before spaghetti westerns, but you could kind of see maybe some of those inclinations in that direction, and obviously, stylistically speaking, thematically, I think we could definitely see those early shifts from the studio system western to what would become the spaghetti western, and ultimately the 70s western, which was more metaphysical and whatever.
Absolutely. Well,
existential, I should say.
I agree. And as we kind of go from there, the movie kind of starts, and it starts quick. But remember, we usually like to have a question when we watch these.
Yep.
And I think we kind of have a question because we already kind of mentioned it in our before section.
I think you're right.
John Wayne posed the question, posed the statement, this is the most un-American thing he's ever seen.
Yeah.
Essentially, I'm paraphrasing.
Yeah.
I think that should be our question. Is this the most un-American thing you've ever seen?
I think it's the most simple question, and one that I think deserves answering through this conversation.
Great, and we'll do that. But let me I saw the interview. I saw an interview where he was asked about that quote. So to be fair to John, I think his response was, I guess one of the things he mentioned was in the church scene, which we'll get to. All the men and women sat on different sides, and that bothered him.
Yeah.
The ending of the movie really bothered him, and we'll kind of talk about that. And then the other thing that really bothered him was like that the whole town seemed intimidated by 3 guys at the train station.
Sure. I guess
that 3 guys are going to the 3 guys are going to terrorize this whole town, and I get it, but I think thematically for them, like I think if you remade this movie now, the gang would be bigger.
Probably.
But it's like it doesn't matter. Like their numbers aren't like what's matters.
It's not the point, right?
It's more of a mental thing anyway.
How many day players do we want to pay for this thing?
Exactly.
Really?
So pretend it's 9 or whatever. Who cares? It's just they symbolize this gang coming to town, and that's really where I guess where we're at with the movies. We start with this gang, and they're waiting for Frank Miller to show up on a train.
Yeah.
And basically take over this town again.
Yeah, I mean it's a great simple setup. The bad guys roll into town. And you can kind of see how the town reacts to them, so you kind of get acclimated to, the gravity of them being there and what that means for everybody.
Yeah.
Whether it's just through small actions and stuff like that.
They're like, there's no way that could be them. They're locked up down south or something. Like,
exactly.
I guess it is them.
I guess it is them. It couldn't be.
They must be bad.
Yeah. So and even a step before that, the kind of silent sequence, under the Tex Ritter song, and I kind of even wrote down maybe an homage to the silent westerns a bit, since there's no dialogue and you can kind of you have to piece together what's going on through the actions, as they kind of saddle up to go into town.
Yeah. Well, that's what reminded me of Once Upon a Time in the West, where it's not silent because it's really all about sound, but there's no talking.
Right. So, yeah, I get that. Yeah. But and then you're immediately introduced to Will Kane, who is the
Gary Cooper.
Gary Cooper.
Yep.
And he's getting married. And, so he kind of
Grace Kelly.
To Grace Kelly.
And her first film.
Yeah. So it's there's this kind of happy, jovial moment.
Sure.
Of the marriage. It's kind of it's kind of cut somewhat short, if you will, because they get married and then it's okay, these guys are here.
Yeah. It's confirmed.
Right. And they lay out, Frank Miller has been released. Well, I should say that the 3 guys leaving Cleef and the other 2 guys, they head to the station, they talk to the train station guy, find out that the noon train's on time, and then simultaneously he's getting that telegram,
right?
Which is what he takes to Will Kane, and it lets him know Frank Miller is out and he's on his way.
Yes, and he wants revenge on Will Kane.
Yeah.
Will's set to leave. He's kind of retired from the deputy of this town, or marshal, and then but the new marshal isn't in town till tomorrow.
Right.
So everybody's like, Will, get out of here, and that you just got married, get out, and they get him on his little buggy and he rides off. But that doesn't last long because Will is an American hero. Right. Will is a man. And he's probably about 5 minutes out, and he realizes he's got to turn back. He can't leave this town to Frank Miller's bidding.
Right.
And then there's some interesting confrontation that starts to creep into the movie with Will now and Grace Kelly, his Amy, his wife.
Yeah.
The character of Will Kane is so much I think dedication, loyalty, and this in the movie they refer to it as being a man a lot, like manhood. Where I think nowadays we maybe would just call it more like being a hero. But I think that's what Will Kane kind of embodies in this movie so well.
Yeah.
But it's funny because the twist on it is it's not always necessarily 100% reciprocated. And we'll get
definitely not.
We'll get into this.
And this is and everything we said is this is the first 10 minutes. The first 10 minutes you're in it up to your neck.
Yeah.
And I think that's so on a pacing level, they really don't. This is a tight.
Absolutely.
Like I said, tight. It's not even 90 minutes. It's
82.
Yeah, I was gonna say 82, 86, somewhere around there. It is really fast. So they, it's a freight train. For waiting for that noon train. That noon train is coming. You got an hour and a half, and it's coming.
And you start to figure. Speaking of pacing, you start to figure out that this movie is shot in basically real time. It's not I said it before, I think, but it's not a one or anything like that. But it's essentially shot when you pick up, it's like 80 minutes to go until Frank gets there, and there's 80 minutes left of the movie, give or take,
roughly,
whatever.
Yeah.
And so you're going from there, and I think that's harder to pace as well as this movie does.
Sure.
But it is like, they kind of called this movie like a thriller Western,
Right.
back in the day, and it is
Sure.
that. I think as that count gets, and the movie frames clocks everywhere. It's like
Yeah.
brilliantly placed clocks, and you kind of as a viewer always know what the time is.
Yeah.
Which I think is really helpful and adds to that tension.
Yeah.
That you start to experience as the clock goes, and you're you're feeling what Will Kane is feeling. You're getting a little tense too when you start to see how things aren't shaping up.
Yeah. Well, and then it just, that's another thing that I think this movie really does a lot of, is adding layers to the tension.
Yeah.
So, like I said, you got the bad guys rolling in town, you got the wedding, you got, them running after you realize, or, finding out Frank's coming, they leave, he comes back, but, and then now all of a sudden you got the layer of his marriage. It's kind of like in flux that literally, we just got married 10 minutes ago, and we're already on the rocks, He's like, she's like, you don't have to be a hero, not for me. And he was like, if you think I like this, you're crazy.
Right.
And it's like, so, at that moment they kind of split. And so you've got that layer onto it where, now he's, torn between a woman that he loves, you assume he loves, and he just married, and this town that he was going to be leaving anyway.
Right.
And he feels some kind of loyalty to.
Yeah.
And the judge.
Yeah, I was going to say, so that, Grace Kelly is the first layer
Right.
that gets peeled away from Will Kane, and then the judge is the second. And you can assume that the judge and him are teammates in a sense.
Sure.
I bring him in and you lock him up, get him locked up. And he's bailing.
Yeah.
And he has some good little quotes in there. Something from history that I think was real, but I can never remember what he's talking about. But something where like the town kind of turned their back and ran, and that's basically what he's going to do. And he'll go be a judge somewhere else. He ain't going to stay here.
Sure.
And so that's another layer. But I think where the meat of this movie is for me is there's like 3 or 4 more scenes, maybe 4 scenes where like Will really kind of gets, let's just say it, left out to dry by the town. I think that's what this movie is really about. Is this man who's got all this loyalty in the world, and then it's not always going to be reciprocated. So let's hit up maybe those 4 scenes.
Sure.
They're such a big part of this middle section of the movie.
Okay.
And we'll go from there. Which one was first? I'm not sure.
Was the bar? No.
Bar was, I think later. Well, I know first is he finds Herb.
So, right. Well,
Herb comes to him.
Yeah,
so, and this actually wasn't one of the 4 scenes I was thinking of, but
so 5 scenes.
Yeah, probably.
We got 5 scenes now, everybody.
Herb's real quick though. Herb basically shows up and he's all for helping Will.
Oh man,
yeah.
He's like, I'll get my gun. I'm ready to go.
We chased Frank out before. We can do it again, and I'm going to go get some things. You go, because Will's got to put together the posse that's going to chase Frank Miller out of town.
Right.
And so Herb's posse member 1, and now it's Will's job to go get the rest.
Mm-hmm.
And so getting the rest, I guess, is where we're going to get to. So one of those scenes, let's just start with the church scene. That's just popping in my brain. I'm not sure if it was chronologically.
It's definitely
next.
not, because Harvey, I think with the Harvey scene where he goes to, like,
the wife.
Well, he's got the deputy, because he has a deputy.
Oh, Harvey, yeah. Lloyd Bridges.
Let's
go there.
So, like, he has so we'll definitely get to the church scene, because it's great. But, like, so with Harvey, who, as you said, Lloyd Bridges, he is like the natural backup because he is the deputy.
Yes.
So there's, again, kind of going back to the layer, he adds another layer. He has a deputy who should be at his side. So
his wife has left him, the judge has left him, and now his deputy's leaving him.
Right. Like, his deputy is kind of sore at him because he thinks, like, oh, he should be the replacement marshal, but he thinks Will blocked him from the job somehow.
Didn't give him a letter of recommendation at the very least.
Yeah. It's clear that the deputy doesn't want to really have any part of it, so he just quits and goes to sit in the bar, which we will get to.
Yeah.
But you also find out, at that point, like, does he find out about Helen at that point?
Harvey tells Will about Helen after they have their scene together. Yeah.
So you're bringing up, I think maybe a movie, almost borderline movie stealing performance.
Yeah, I think she might be my favorite character in the movie in some ways.
So Helen Ramirez, played by Katy Jurado.
Yeah,
I looked it up. Is just fantastic.
She's amazing.
I mean, she is no holds barred, doesn't hold back. I mean, she has kind of an attack by ally scene with Harvey pretty early on. Like,
Yeah.
when are you going to grow up?
Right.
Broad shoulders don't make a man,
Yeah.
or something like
A lot
that.
of great lines.
Yeah.
She's very strong.
Definitely. But she used to be with Will.
And with Frank before that.
So it's like,
Yeah.
you've got all these layers to this relationship. So again, you just kind of keep adding all this stuff on. And the tension builds with every added layer.
Absolutely.
So, he's got one guy, Herb.
Right.
But Harvey, who should be by his side, is gone. And...
Well, so is Harvey the scene where he goes to that knock on the door and he makes his wife answer? Oh, no, Harvey's the deputy. Golly, I'm sorry. I'm trying to blank here. I'm trying to get
You're
to
talking
those...
about Harry Morgan, who is... It's fantastic that he's in this movie, even for like 2 seconds, which seems weird. But Harry Morgan from MASH fame, everybody, who is amazing.
Absolutely.
And Dragnet, the original series. With,
I wasn't aware of that
Frank,
one.
Yeah.
Well, that was one of the 4 scenes that I was talking about. I'm all discombobulated because I wanted to talk about them because they're so good.
Right.
Well, let's start with that one where, Frank or Will is walking up to his house. He sees him coming. He knows what he wants.
Yeah.
He wants he's going to be asked to join the posse. So he makes his wife answer the door and tells her to lie for him.
Yeah.
Tell him I'm not here.
Tell him I'm not here.
She's like, he's gonna know I'm lying.
He's a friend of mine. He knows. He's gonna know I'm a terrible liar. So,
and it's a great little scene, because he knocks on the door, and she gives him a little lie. She says he's at church, and Will, you can just see in Gary Cooper's face, like it hurt. It's like you just stabbed him a little bit because he knows it's a lie. He just hears
in there.
He just hears the lie and he just says he went to church without you.
Yeah,
I'm going later, and then part of this being a man or being a hero that Will Kane is, he just says thanks and turns around and leaves, knowing he's going to get left to. But I also think really interesting, when once Will leaves and the wife and husband are back together, the wife's looking at him, and you can't see her face in the shot, the way it's framed. You can only see his reaction to her, and you can tell that she just must be looking at him with some disdain.
Right.
She's like, "What do you want? You want me to go die? You want me to go with Will and you be a widow? And is that what you want?"
Yeah.
No, that's not what I want. But,
absolutely.
And
again, it's kind of this building tension because it's like, you hope that, with every door he knocks on, he's going to find somebody willing to help him.
Right.
And it's just not happening.
No. So he's 0 for 4 right now. No wife, like no deputy, no judge, nobody here. So now the church scene.
I do think the church scene is next, but before we get to the church scene, kind of like in the same vein and kind of talking about a layer, because I think this is actually one of the more interesting layers that's kind of tossed on at a point in the movie that I think is really pivotal and great in the pacing. It's so when Amy and Will kind of break apart, and Amy goes to buy a ticket, she decides she's going to leave on the noon train that Frank Miller's coming in on. She's going to leave on, but so she's still got to wait. She goes to the hotel to wait, and while she's there, she encounters the desk clerk, who why is this guy so creepy?
I literally wrote the same word, like creepy.
Right, it's so weird, this
Very
performance, weird, but I think it's you can tell right away that he's kind of team Frank Miller, and doesn't like Will, and I think he even says where is it? It's gonna be. He says it's gonna be quite a sight to see. I wrote that line down, and there is a part where she asks him if you don't like my husband or something like that, and he basically says no, a lot of people in this town would like to see him kind of get a comeuppance. So it's interesting. You've kind of got this almost bomb under the table moment where you're he's going around this town trying to find people to help him, but you're basically told that there are going to be people in this town that don't like him, and want to see him die, and it's going to be is somebody going to turn on him at some moment? And
for a second there, I'm thinking well, what did Will do in his past that this town might not like him? But immediately, the creepy guy's this town was a lot busier when Frank Miller was running a wreck. I was like, what? You're mad at him because he cleaned up the town. There's no crime and like vigilantes running through the town, and
Yeah.
and now your business is a little slow.
Right.
I mean,
Seems
is that
like
un-American or is
right.
that American?
I don't know.
That's a little. I mean, that's a line on corporate greed if I've ever.
I
seen
think you're
one.
probably right. Yeah,
You
I
know?
don't really care what kind of clientele I
Like,
get as long
basically.
as they're paying me.
Yeah, I don't care if the town is safe. I don't care if the town, if people can walk down the street.
Yeah.
Like, I just want to be busy. I want every hotel, booked or
Yeah.
room here, full.
Yeah,
You
and
know?
then after that, you have the Ben Miller, right? Isn't it like
Yes,
his Frank's
it is
brother?
Ben Miller.
Like goes into town, goes to the saloon, and that's when he's like welcomed with open arms
Right.
at the saloon, and that's when you really kind of it's nailed home. Like, oh man, like
Yeah, at least
what
everybody.
is he
Yeah.
walking into?
Yeah.
You know?
Well, it is a Sunday, so you think everybody in the bar on the Sunday is probably like, I think that's their way of showing them these are the not good people of
Fair
the
enough,
town,
right?
for
Gunslingers.
1952 and stuff. But yeah, and then you can really though see that they have a strong following for sure, like in that bar. So now nobody in that bar is rooting for Will.
Yeah.
You said we've already crossed a couple of his friends off the list that are just unwilling to help. Not
Yeah.
that they're not fans of Will, but they're not willing to help regardless.
Exactly.
But then
the best scene.
then the church
now we're
scene.
finally here. We can talk about the church scene.
yes, the church scene is great because Will basically walks into church and has to ask for help.
Right.
Tell me what you thought about the scene
Yeah,
first.
I mean, there is a complexity to this scene that's just so compelling. So, like, he walks in, and the preacher's obviously kind of upset that he's disturbing services, and even also upset that he didn't have his wedding at the church. But then when he's informed that his wife Amy's a Quaker, he kind of understands. Go, okay, speak. So, like, then he makes his pitch to the audience, and I mean, this scene is so interesting because it really does kind of encompass all human emotion and rationale.
Absolutely.
Because you've got all of these different people who are looking at this situation from a half a dozen different ways about why they should or shouldn't help in this moment.
Right.
Whether you're talking about the people that are like, well, I pay taxes or whatever for protection. This is not my job. Like, that's why we pay you. You're the one who's supposed to take care of this.
You're the deputy.
You're the deputy, or you're the marshal.
Marshal, yeah.
So it's up to you. And then there's other people that are like, what are you talking about? Like, he's the best marshal we've ever had. Like, this town is clean and safe because of him.
We
like,
should support him.
We should support him. And then, there's other people that are like, you should leave.
Right.
And that's kind of.
You should arrest those guys already.
Arrest the guys already. Yeah, kind of going back to what
Don't wait for Frank
John
to
Wayne
get here.
brought up. Yeah, like, why are you even waiting? And then that's when he's like, well, they haven't done anything. They're just sitting there. I can't arrest them for just sitting on a bench.
Yeah.
So
Even if they're about to kill you, Will not bend the law there.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Which is interesting because, I think you as a viewer up to this point have probably thought about it, multiple different angles on this and have come to some kind of a conclusion as to where you stand in this situation. And I think between everybody that speaks, they all kind of they nail every one of them. You know what I mean? So like, because I had that thought at one point, like, why doesn't he just go over and like cut the body before the head of the snake even arrives? And but I mean, he's right. It's from like a moral, lawful standpoint, right? Like, he can't do anything. They haven't really done anything.
Yeah, the scene really is brilliantly written by showing so many different points of view, like precisely, like it's a quick scene, like it's not a quick scene, but it's like it's paced really well. Like it's you're bouncing from opinion to opinion really quickly, and you just like they kind of sum up like every kind of viewpoint you could think of. And then the guy who gets the mic last, right, like the guy who speaks last, basically what it comes down to him, and this guy kind of seems like a friend of Will, from the past, and he's like, hey, this town's growing. We have investors that might want to get this town booming. A shooting and a massacre ain't gonna help us, and the best way to avoid that is for you to leave, Will.
Yeah.
And so Will's asking for help, and again he's told, just leave town. We'll be fine on our own. Just leave. And I don't know what would happen if Will leaves and you just let Frank come back into the town. Like, it doesn't sound to me like that would be a good thing.
Right. Like, do you think he would just come in and be like, oh, well, nobody's here.
Okay.
Well, I guess I'm going to leave now.
Yeah.
Y'all have fun.
Yeah. I'm just going to be a normal citizen now. I'm going to be a rule follower, and everything will be great. I don't see that happening, but I don't know if this town's really thinking about, the consequences of their actions much. But,
I totally agree with that.
but yeah,
But it's kind of funny, like just as like quick asides, like I think there's a couple of interesting elements to this scene, and one of them is the kids.
yeah.
So like they kick all the kids out because this is grown up talk, and they all like they all like cheer to go outside, and then like when Will leaves, they're outside like playing like a weird like tug of war game.
Yeah.
And then he runs up on some kids in the street playing like a shootout.
Like a cops and robbers.
Right. And they may even like I think one of them even like I think it's like the Frank Miller gang like and Will, so they're like playing that kind of shootout.
The kid says bang bang you're dead, Will Kane.
Yeah.
So they're playing go kill Will Kane.
Right.
Like, that's the game they're playing.
So it's like it's super interesting, you know, with what you could be kind of gleaming from that, you know.
Yeah. It's really that this town has no intention of helping, and almost you're just like, all right, Will, I want you to leave now,
right?
Because screw these people, like they don't want to help you.
Yeah,
quit trying to help them. Let them go, you know, get eaten by this guy. You know, let this town burn. I mean, forget it. You're trying, they're not.
Right. So it's fortuitous because at this point is another great scene.
Great scene.
Because it's when he goes to his friend Martin Howe, played by Lon Chaney Jr.
Yep.
And he really is kind of like the face of that disenfranchised, disaffected form or moral superiority figure. You know, like he used to be the marshal, and now he's just so dissatisfied and so disgusted with people that he doesn't have the time for it anymore.
Yeah.
It's all for nothing. Yep, it's all for nothing. Like he has so many great lines, but it really does boil down to just it's all for nothing.
It's all for nothing because his thing is like, you know, basically what he's kind of telling Will is, Will, you've done a great job here. You've lived a noble life, and there's a good chance in 20 minutes you're gonna be laying dead in the dirt.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, he might. Like you're like, so what's it for? It's all for nothing if that happens, right? So so why go through with it? And so, you know, scratch him off the list. He's not helping either.
Another one down. And you know, also kind of side tangentially to this happening, parallel, Amy finally, like, kind of after getting wind that there was something between Helen and Will, she goes up to the room to meet Helen.
Right.
And I think this is a great scene.
Yes.
Between these two actresses.
You know, I'm dating myself. I'm not an expert on 1950s movies, but I think like the two women in this movie to me are really strong characters.
Sure.
One is of color, and I just think I don't know if that was like ahead of its time back then, but it's really well done here. I just have to say that. Yeah.
And so, you know, she thinks Will's staying, like Amy thinks Will is staying for Helen.
Right.
And you know, so and Helen obviously clearly knows that's not the case.
Yeah.
Like
and she sets her straight pretty.
Yeah. If you don't know, then I cannot explain it to you.
Yeah.
You know.
And she finds out Helen's not staying, so he's definitely not staying for me because I'm not staying.
Right. She sold her store that she owns, and she's heading out of town on the same train as Amy.
Yeah. She knows because she knows what's going to happen to the town if Will dies or if Will leaves.
Yeah.
And she ain't going to be a part of it if that happens.
Yeah.
And Frank's back.
And you kind of get some of Amy's backstory in this, like
I
why
really
she seems like a bit of a pacifist,
Yeah.
which, you know, again, being a Quaker, you know, that's part of it is religion.
Yeah.
But, you know, I think there's maybe a little bit more to it even than that, you know.
Yeah. Well, you know, she has a great explanation because, you know, she said her brother and her dad died due to gun violence.
Right.
And they were on the right side of it too. Just like Will is.
Mm-hmm.
But being on, I think her quote is something along the lines of, you know, being on the right side of it doesn't stop you from getting killed.
Yeah,
you know
I don't
mean?
care who's right or who's wrong. Yeah, there's got to be a better way for people to live.
Yeah,
that's what
So
I wrote that one down too.
Yeah, so I mean, which I thought was just a great line. It really added depth to Amy's character. I thought, you know, right there, it's like she's not this flat like don't do it Will character and like put pressure on him to leave. No, she does have a backstory, and she has an opinion that I agree with. You know,
right?
Like because again, it doesn't matter if Will's going to be right or wrong. He could end up dying, and that actually leads me to a question: where are you at watching this movie for the first time? At this point in the movie, do you think Will's going to live or die? Like, had that thought crept into your head?
Absolutely crossed my mind, and at this point, I feel like I definitely think he was going to die.
Yeah. Because
he gets so many doors kind of slammed in his face. You know, I know he had Herb, you know, still kind of in his back pocket, but like, you know, he's not getting anybody else. No. You know, when he goes to the bar, like he definitely gets turned away at the bar. You know, nobody's going to help him. Yeah, the bar.
There. You know, he walks into the bar and they're taking odds on how quickly he dies, what time it'll be when he dies.
Right. Bartender seems to be like on the same wavelength as the creepy hotel clerk.
Yeah.
You know, they all kind of want to see him get his comeuppance, and they're all friends with Frank Miller.
Yep.
So, you know, the odds are, I mean, clearly stacked against him at this point. Like
Yeah.
you just don't see a way out.
Yeah, yeah. And I think Helen, as we kind of wrap up their scene, Helen, kind of tells Amy like, you should fight for your man. Like
Right.
he might not be,
What kind of woman are you?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, now we really get to the point where the clock's ticking. And one last thing before Frank shows up, Herb comes back, because at least we got Herb still on the team, right?
Yeah.
Well, no, not really.
No. Her back's out.
Yeah, once Herb finds out that the posse is just Will and him,
it's just you.
that's not really what I was going to try to get in here. That's
Right.
That's not what you were selling me, Will.
Right.
And he
There's
backs
a
out
limit
pretty
to what
quick.
you can ask of a man.
There is, and helping Will is the limit.
It's like, if you get more guys, I'll come back.
I'll be back in a second.
Right, just get more guys. So again, I feel like that's kind of the last hope. Because even before this, there's like another great scene with Harvey where they fight in
Will and Harvey fight
in the barn. I think that so that's kind of an
Again,
interesting-
Harvey's trying, like, snapping. He's like trying to force Will to leave,
right.
and Will's
It's
like,
the
"I'm
last
not
time.
leaving."
Yeah, it's the last time that I think somebody tries to get him to leave before Frank arrives. But
Yeah.
nope, not happening.
Yeah,
And so after her breaks out, you're kind of the final countdown. Like
you hear the train
you
whistle,
hear the train whistle
and
sound.
the whole town's like,
Yep.
oh,
Yeah, there's like a great montage of shots, like the town kind of waiting. There's like that empty
Yeah.
chair, and I think it's in the judge's chamber,
Yeah.
if you will, like where Frank was sitting when they had his trial or
Right.
whatever. So it's like this empty chair that's at the point like it's kind of been the stand-in for Frank Miller.
Right.
So I think that's really great.
The chair was scary in the beginning.
Sure, right. And then, but now the street is empty except for Amy and Helen, who are they're just done. They're like,
Yeah.
screw it, we're heading to the train station. Good luck.
Yeah.
If you're dumb enough to do this, then we
out.
can't help you.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. It's funny when Frank eventually gets there, the train shows up. Frank's the only person on the train.
Right.
Like he's the only one that walks off, and then Helen walks on,
yeah,
and so does Amy. And then I will say, like, to be fair, I'm kind of I gush over this movie a lot. I do think Frank's a bit of a letdown.
he's a bit underwhelming. I was just thinking the same thing. I'm like, visually, he's a bit underwhelming.
He's just like a normal guy, maybe a little scar
Right.
on his cheek, but
Just
he
like,
looks like a normal guy.
right.
Like, you're scary?
This
Are you
guy?
scary? I don't think you're scary.
Okay.
So,
This guy, maybe he's just really good.
yeah. So, but whatever. We know what he's symbolizing.
Right.
We know his history. It's
Yeah.
built up enough, and so they start their walk into town.
Yeah, and they kind of stalk towards each other,
Yeah.
but you haven't seen each other, but you kind of, they cut it together as if they're stalking towards
Yeah.
each other. And then, like, you're in that moment, you're like, in a movie like this, where you kind of have this idea of, okay, the town is like, turned him down. You expect at some point that they're all going to kind of have that change of heart.
They all have the epiphany.
Right, they all have that kind of epiphany, and then all of a sudden they all show up, and it's
Lightning
like
has struck
40
their
right.
brains.
It's lightning has just struck my brain. It's an apostrophe. But yeah, so I think you expect them to have that, and you're
course they
waiting
will.
for it. You're waiting for them to like pop out of the doors or whatever.
We
and all
got
have
you,
guns.
Will.
We're coming to save you, and it never happens.
Nope.
None of them show
Will
up.
is on his own.
Yeah, so then they have their shootout. Amy does rush off the train though.
Right.
So she does end up in the mix because she does end up killing one of Frank's goons.
Yeah, she does.
Kind of saves his life.
She does. She grins and bears it, takes a gun in her hand, and kills the man for Will, which
Yeah.
is that's what real love is. If your wife won't kill for you, then
I don't know. Yeah, exactly. It's what all I want for my marriage.
But it's a nice little. I heard it was for the time it was a heck of a set piece. That this final like 5 minute fight
for
here.
sure. Yeah.
While Will is like creeping around the town and hiding and finding ways to kill off Frank's
Yeah.
gang.
You got the whole barn sequence with the horses and stuff.
Set
the
fire to the
too.
barn.
Yeah, it is.
And then Will has to save the horses because you can't just go. He's got to save all the
He's a hero.
horses.
He's a hero, and he uses it as a distraction. To be fair.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, he sneaks out that way too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then obviously Will ends up killing Frank.
Yeah, with an assist from Amy because she's kind of
Right.
taking hostage. She like scratches him real quick and gets
Yep.
away, and then Will can get a shot
Shoots
on
him.
Frank.
Yep, and gets that, and then and that's kind of the end, and everybody kind of comes out of their hidey holes.
Yeah.
And
Will, you're the one that's left standing.
Will,
Cool.
you're still here, man.
Was
We
not
we were
expecting
literally
this.
just getting ready to come out here. You wouldn't believe it. I
Yeah.
had my gun in my hand, and then the shooting stopped, and then look, I'm so glad you're safe.
My timing is the worst.
But I'm so glad you're safe.
Yeah.
And then he gets his wagon name. He's like, all right, we're getting out of here.
Yeah.
And he just takes the star off, tosses it on the ground. They are out.
That's
they
it.
ride into the sunset.
Cut.
End of movie.
Cut.
End of movie. Screw you guys. I'm out of here.
I'm going to my new home.
Right.
Yeah.
It's an abrupt ending in a sense.
Very.
But
very.
But to be fair, that for a studio western, and that's kind of where I think, this movie kind of is interesting compared to other westerns from the period, where it's like, there's realism and there's idealism.
Exactly.
And I think this movie kind of embodies realism a little bit more than what you would normally think of as your John Wayne studio western.
Yeah.
That's the idealism.
Yeah. John Wayne pulls the town together. John Wayne creates a posse.
Right.
Will Kane doesn't.
Right.
You know what I mean?
It doesn't always work out that way.
And tying back to earlier talking about John Wayne, he said he hated the ending because he couldn't fathom a marshal stepping on his star. That's the ending that really upset him.
Yeah.
Which, if the whole town stabs you in the back like that, you don't think you're gonna quit? Be a little angry?
Right.
No, I buy it. I totally buy it.
Well, John Wayne is like, these 3 guys, I've killed 20 in a movie before, and people gotta be like, John, you realize those were stuntmen, right?
Yeah.
You didn't actually kill those. What are you talking about? I shot every one of them.
I've never missed.
Shot every one of them. I don't know what you're talking about. I took out my gun and it bang, 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 and they all fell down. I don't know.
I love that impression, but who is it of?
I don't know. Definitely not John Wayne.
Well, let's talk about our question about, is this movie un-American? John Wayne's quote, he said it, not us.
Not us.
And I think part of it, is the town doesn't come and help him, and that is un-American.
Right.
That they would not stand up to violence, that they would be worried about their own self-interest. Rob, in your opinion, is that part of this movie un-American?
Well, it's so I think there's kind of multifacets to this answer. So
I only want one of the facets.
Well, I'm going to give you all of them, whether you like it or not.
Okay.
You're getting all of them. So, I think the first one is kind of what I brought up earlier about the idea of the idealism versus the realism.
Mm-hmm.
So, John Wayne, I have a very complicated feeling towards John Wayne for a number of reasons. But, he is without a doubt a product of the studio tough guy, like the studio system as your Western war movie tough guy.
Right.
Like we contend with the archetype of John Wayne to this day.
Yeah, and Will Kane's not far off from that archetype in a lot of ways. He just gets broken down.
Right. And so you look at a character, all the different characters that John Wayne has played over the years, and he plays this, like I said, this ideal version of masculinity, if you will.
Sure.
And to be honest, it's boring to me.
Yeah.
There's no complexity to it. It's like the equivalent of sucking down a pixie stick and getting real high off like the you know what I mean, that like feel like that's it's like that's really what it is. It's like just sugar in the gas tank.
Yeah.
And it's like there's no, like I said, there's very little complexity to it. And
it's like a Superman movie. Speaking about heroes, it's like Superman's kind of boring. He never makes the wrong decision. He's unbeatable.
Right. And I'm not, again, like,
John Wayne never misses a shot.
Right. And I'm not saying that John Wayne has never played a complex character. That's not what I'm saying. I'm more using him, I guess, as an archetype. And
for the studio Western back then.
And like I said, we deal with that to this day. There are people in our society right now, talking about the idea of masculinity and like what it really means to be a man and what's a man and what's not a man. And, all the while they're railing against Hollywood and all of these things, but it's like they don't realize that their idea of masculinity comes from movies.
Mm-hmm.
It is what they've seen on screen for their entire life.
Yeah. Slash TV.
Whether it's John Wayne or Clint Eastwood or whatever. It is all built on fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's kind of the interesting thing, because you're right. When you look at a character like Gary Cooper, he does have a lot of those similar ideals. he is one man taking on the posse,
The gang, yeah.
and despite it all, he will not stop. Like, he has those ideals, but there is a complexity to him, and ultimately he does not fall. Like, while he goes through with the job, his feelings about the town and the job itself are not that fairy tale idealistic
not
ending.
at all.
And that's more interesting to me.
Yeah. He felt he became his friend Mark, where he understood that, you know what, it is all for nothing. I literally did this for nothing.
Right.
I risked my life for nothing, and that's why he throws the star down.
Definitely. So, it's that's one facet. The other facet, though, and I will say, on the flip of that, flippity flop, is that with the Gary Cooper character, I also take issue with this idea that nobody in the town would help him. It's like everybody's lazy except for the cop.
We're scared, yeah.
Or scared, whatever. And so in that regard, I can kind of see where John Wayne is coming from. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In that idea where it's like the entire town is scared of 4 guys, or whatever. You've got, if everybody has a gun, like, come on.
Right.
Like, this is the Old West. There's no rules here. That's why they called it the Old West, the Wild West. So, it's interesting that, you kind of have, obviously it's not a vigilante situation, but there is like a Rambo-esque kind of element to it. He's just kind of a sad Rambo.
Yeah.
Because he's like, oh, please, somebody help me.
He wouldn't be sad if everybody was helping him.
Somebody help me. And I know. But so, so that kind of maybe is a notch in John Wayne's.
Right.
Well,
I guess my pushback would be like, if you tell me that people's number one interest isn't themselves, then I would push back with that, because their number one now. Yes, this group mob mentality should be able to take this gang.
Yeah.
But it's scary to be the first one, like Herb.
Yeah.
In the movie, to be the first one to say yes and start the domino effect. And if nobody's want to be the first one, if nobody's want to knock over the first domino, then it doesn't get done.
Right.
And I do agree with that.
So that brings me to my third facet. Which is really,
I forgot about the multi-facets.
The multi-facets. So this brings us back to the church scene.
Yeah.
Which I think is the crux. So as we have seen already in this movie, when he goes to the church, there's a half a dozen different ideas of how to handle this situation. Everything from passing the buck to, oh, we're all gonna help.
Right.
To you should just leave.
Yep.
And everything, in between. And in the end, there's no real consensus. Yes, like the last guy says you should leave, but that doesn't mean that everybody else just has to go along with it because this one guy said that.
But nobody.
But it kind of becomes a stalemate.
Right.
So you're in a situation where you what you need to do or what you think you need to do, but you've got everybody's arguing to the point where they can't get anything done. Like nothing comes of it because it's just like he walks out by himself again. It's like, well, that was a waste of 10 minutes, or half hour.
That sounds very American.
So the question becomes, is this the most un-American thing you've ever seen, or is this the most American thing you've ever seen? And I'm not going to lie, I actually am leaning towards the latter. This may be the most American thing you've ever seen.
And I really think John Wayne
in the world we live in, especially.
Yeah, I really think John Wayne saying it's the most un-American thing is the key piece of evidence that lets you know this is actually the most American thing he's ever seen. Because it's not the Hollywood American thing that he wants it to be. It's a real American thing.
Yeah.
But and like in some ways you can't fault all these people. I'm
not saying you can.
But I'm saying I'm not trying to say I'm not trying to villainize the town folk necessarily for not helping, but that is what the movie wants you to question.
Yeah.
But the movie does other things. Like I said, we mentioned it talks on corporate greed, talks about gun violence. From Amy's perspective too, and those are all American ideals that we deal with regularly too. So, I think I would agree with you. I think it's pretty American.
I think it's the most American thing. Maybe more American than anything John Wayne has ever actually done.
Which is exactly why this movie stands the test of time and is always ranked in the top 10 of Westerns of all time. I definitely agree that it's a top 10 Western of all time. But Rob, I want to ask you, How did you like this movie overall, and would you recommend it?
Okay, so I'm going to say yes. I liked the movie. I did have some conflicting feelings about the movie, and I think that kind of goes back to like even like maybe even sympathizing with some of John Wayne's issues, like I said, with the town or whatever. But I think ultimately the complexity of it and what it is saying, and and even more so than just this idea of like the lone hero just
Right.
doing the right thing no matter what. And
Yeah.
I mean, you can get behind that. You can absolutely get behind that. Whatever your issue is, if you feel that it is the right thing to do, no matter what anybody else is doing, you're going to do it. I can get behind that. But, you know, again, like you kind of have to take that idea of nobody helping him and like everybody kind of either being scared or lazy
Yeah.
as more of just a way to bolster that central theme.
Yeah,
as
for sure.
Unless instead of kind of being derogatory to like the community as a whole.
Yeah.
Because I think that is something that we are missing a lot now. Is
Yeah.
this idea of community, and we're so stuck on the idea of the individual, where that. So I will say this is maybe a first. I'm going to say yes, I liked the movie, but there is a complex feeling about it for me
Yeah,
because
that's fair.
I think there is still, even in its complexity, a certain idealism. You know,
Mhm.
again, kind of going flying in the face of John Wayne's comments.
Right.
You know, there is an idealism to the movie that I can understand and appreciate, but also feel that it demeans maybe something larger.
Fair.
And so it's complex, but I liked it.
Good.
I liked it, and I would recommend it because, again, especially from a complexity standpoint of a Western of this time, like you're not going to find one maybe more complex.
Yeah, that's
than
what
this.
I think that's just where I leave this movie too. Is I just always think like it always is surprising to me, especially when I date it back to 1952, like how complex this movie tried to be, or it succeeded, in my opinion, at being.
Yeah.
You know, it put so much out there. You know, and I will say just one thing, even to Will Kane, you know, there is one line early in the movie when he's arguing about if he should go back and be this hero, is that he said, you know, he thinks also if he doesn't go back to the town, they're going to hunt us down and find us
Sure.
anyway.
Yeah.
So there's part of this, like, he's not just like this, like, well, I'm doing this just because, you know, duty above all. He's also like, I think this is the best. If I'm going to survive, Frank, this is my best place to
and
do
that's
it anyway.
fair.
So
Yeah, and that's fair.
he's not just
That's fair.
the John Wayne hero. He's a little bit more complicated than that. So, but well, good. I'm glad you like it.
Yeah.
I love this movie. I definitely think people should check it out. I think it surprises you.
Sure.
I think there's a much funner view or much more complex Western viewing experience than I think you would expect. I really enjoy that, but I know it's not for everybody. But I definitely do. I'm glad you at least liked it.
Oh yeah, no. I definitely liked it. Like I said, it's just, and it's a better thing that I have a complex feeling about it because again,
better
it makes
than no
you think.
feeling at all.
Right. Well, absolutely, and it makes you think, and
Yeah.
you have to appreciate a movie that is going to challenge your expectations, which I agree. Like I came into this movie expecting something completely different.
Yeah.
This was not what I was expecting from a Western from 1952.
I love that.
I was not expecting that. So for that, again, kudos.
Yeah.
I absolutely. I just, I think this was as a movie that maybe will ruminate with me differently over
Sure,
time. Maybe
sure.
we'll revisit it. Maybe next
Okay.
season. Maybe we'll revisit it next season. Like, and I'll see it. Maybe I'll watch it again.
Yeah,
And
talk about it in our
and if I can,
what you're
like,
watching
distill
section.
it, right. Like if I kind of distill it down and like have that,
Yeah.
that firm yes. Like I
Show it to
appreciate
the
more or
missus.
less.
Show it
Right.
to the missus.
Right. Oh, she would hate it. This is not her kind of movie.
All right, Rob. Well, our time is just about up. The train is just about to come into the station and end this conversation at high noon. But before we do, what you been watching?
Man, so I've watched a bit lately, but
So
I
have
have
I.
I have a feeling that this
Yeah.
recommendations section is really just going to be you and me talking about 3 specific
Weekly shows.
So let's just
Yeah, I think
grit
you're
it and
right.
bear it, and we're just going to do it. So let's take them one at a time. So the first thing I finished was Only Murders in the Building.
Me too.
Yep, I knew that. So
We're avid watchers.
we're avid watchers, and I finally finished it, and it's fine.
Yeah,
It's a
fine.
show that's kind of run out of gas.
Yeah, I
feel
think
like.
as a show, I do like the characters.
I do.
But so I don't I'll watch Steve Martin and Martin Short do anything.
Yeah, pretty
but
much all day, every day.
yeah, but it does kind of feel like we're kind of watching the same thing over and over, just a hair.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I think they had some good emotional
Yeah.
beats this season. I think I mean Jane Lynch as
Great.
Saz Pataki
Yes.
is. I mean, it's just great.
Yeah.
I if there was anything really positive about the season, it's that is you got a little
Yeah.
bit more Saz Pataki in like the flashbacks, and then like when
I
you
think the
see
casting is
her-
great. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So that was great, and then kind of like Steve Martin's relationship with Saz, kind of like him kind of doing I'll use the word autopsy
Yeah.
on that as
Yeah,
like
yeah.
through the season, and like and where it kind of ends up in some of like the things that he has to do, the kind of gauntlets that he has
Right.
to go through, in the name of Saz by the end of the season, I think were strong.
Yeah.
But when you just like every season when you just end with another murder, you're just like
Okay. Yeah. It's like rewind and start over. I kind of like. Well, first of all, I feel like this last season might be it because it
hope
kind of
so.
seems like they're going to wrap up. Like, why is this building seem to be haunted in a sense?
right.
And I will say I'd like that. In season 3 when they're like, we're going to get outside the building, we're going to do other murders and stuff. I'm like, yeah, it's fine, but like, it is called Only Murders in the Building. So I like, yes, it's silly. Yes, it doesn't make sense that there's these many murders in the building, but that's the show. It's
Right.
a TV show. So I like that they kind of like, all right, it all happens here, whatever.
Yeah.
So I kind of like that they kind of embraced the theme. But like I
Sure.
said, I still feel like they're running out of runway.
Yeah, I think they're pretty much done. I think this should have been the last season, but if they
Yeah.
have one more season in them, I will watch it. But I am hopeful that it will be it.
I agree.
They land the plane and we're just done.
Yeah, I agree. So, show 2.
Show 2.
Let me guess.
Yep.
Agatha?
Agatha.
Agatha all along on the
Agatha
MCU.
all along,
What'd you think
yeah.
about that? I actually really liked this. I really did.
I did too. I think I was, I will appreciate one thing I can appreciate about the MCU, and I know Marvel gets a lot of crap, especially in the phase that they're in right now, and I think it's justified on a lot of levels. But one thing that I do appreciate about this phase is there is a lot of experimentation. Mostly because
Yeah.
they're like, to be fair, they're just throwing crap at the wall and seeing what
Yeah,
sticks.
they were forced to like meet this quota, I think,
Yeah.
of like content. Now I think they're going to back away from that, but yeah, they threw a lot of stuff against the wall.
Yeah, different styles, different,
Yeah.
whatever. I mean, obviously, like when they launched their TV shows, so WandaVision was one of the. I liked WandaVision.
Yeah, it's probably the best thing they've done.
Yeah, or Loki. I can
Yeah,
make
it's
an
true.
argument for
Yeah.
Loki, but like I think, this being a continuation of the WandaVision idea, I thought worked. They
Me
were
too.
able to kind of keep it in the same vein stylistically, but it does feel different. And I think that all of the performances were spot on, and I think thematics through it worked.
Yeah, I thought they did a great job. This covenant of Agatha's.
Mhm.
I'm like, the problem is you're introducing these 3 new witches that I'm not going to get any emotional attachment for, and it's going to hurt the show. And I was wrong because I actually did get kind of attached to each of their stories. They did enough to give each of them enough background, I think, where it's like I thought they had their moments that shone in like individual episodes.
Sure.
And I really think that helped with, I think what Marvel struggles on TV, it's pacing. Because when they try to write a 6-hour movie, and when you write a 6-hour movie, the middle 2 hours are boring.
Right.
And that means like usually episodes 4 and 5 or 3 and 4 or whatever are boring.
Mhm.
And I thought this show didn't fall into that trap where it's like every episode felt new enough or it was uncovering a new part of backstory that they were filling in that I just felt like it paced out better. And I dug every episode, and like maybe, not to the highest peaks, but like a very consistently, I'm enjoying this level.
Definitely. I think, I will say there is one twist towards the end I won't give away for anybody who hasn't watched the show yet that I think I could see some people having an issue with when it revolves around teen.
Mm-hmm.
I think, toward you, I don't want to give it away as I'm
How he
trying to
becomes
dance around.
teen.
Well, what we've just watched in
Oh, yeah.
relation to teen, if you will. I think that I could see some people kind of being turned off by that, being like, well, why did I just do this? Or, you know what I mean? And like, I think it worked for me.
I think it worked.
But I that's just the
Yeah.
one thing that I could see
Yeah.
some people being kind of like
Question it.
Yeah, I don't know. But my biggest issue was there was not nearly enough Deborah Jo Rupp.
Yeah.
She died way too early.
She did.
Sorry, spoiler alert. Sorry, but like she's just fantastic.
Yeah,
Obviously, that
she's
70
great.
show is one of my
Yeah.
favorite TV shows ever. So like Kitty Foreman is a gem. So
Yeah.
that was a little bit disappointing. But
But
other than
I
that,
will
yeah.
say, I think the show has some rewatchability because of some of the main twists. You almost could go back and rewatch it and see it through a different lens,
You're probably
which
right.
I might do.
You are probably right. Yeah. So now we come to the big kahuna.
Yes.
I feel like
Well,
we're
we
gonna be
know
on the
we've
same-
both been watching this
Yeah,
show.
we both watch it.
We
We
can't
geek
stop.
out on this show all the time.
Yeah.
So, but we both finished it, so it's time to talk about it. And it is the Penguin.
Yes.
And don't get me
Despite
wrong,
all odds.
yeah, DC has been a cesspool of crap for
Yes.
years and years. You can go back and watch some of the old Car Ray Rob videos
You sure
from
can.
back in the day on YouTube and see us talking about the cesspool of crap that is the DCEU.
Yes.
And but the Batman was a decent installment, kind
Yeah.
of being of its own thing. And then when they announced the Penguin, it was like, okay, well, this could be cool because I liked kind of what they had done with the Penguin character in the Batman. But what they did with this show so far exceeded my expectations. It's insane.
You don't need to watch the Batman to appreciate the show.
No,
You don't. This
not
isn't.
even
This
a-
isn't a
nope.
superhero show.
At all.
This is a beautiful character study
Yeah.
of a gang. This is a gangster show. I mean, it's
Yeah.
not. It's like The Godfather.
Yeah.
It's like The Godfather of TV. I mean, it's that strong. And this is a show like we had so many questions about. Like we didn't go in like trying to think that like see this through like a pearly lens. Like this was like, are you going to be able to overcome like how do you have a show with no heroes, like just bad people,
Right.
and like who do I root for? How what are my motives? Am I going to be confused as a viewer? And the answer is maybe you don't know who to root for, but like you're kind of still root for them all. It's perfectly done.
Yeah. Well, you know how again how you make the villain your protagonist as a show. In the show is you take both villains and make their in the show that are villains and make them also the protagonists.
Yeah.
They're everything. They're
Right.
everything they need to be for each other because it's all kind of in relation to the other.
You like root for
And-
everybody, and
yeah.
you don't, and you root against everybody, and it makes sense in your brain.
Yeah, it is an emotional roller coaster. Kristen Melody, who plays Sophia Gigante,
Might have a crush on her.
Oh my
now.
God, she is. I can't even put it in
Give her
words.
the Emmy. Everybody's already said.
Right,
Give her
I
the
ca-
Emmy.
I can't even put it in words. It was a revelation.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, she blew me away in this series. Her solo episode, is one of the best episodes of television I've seen
It
in
is.
recent memory.
Her descent into madness is the best I've ever seen on film.
Yeah.
I stand by that.
Yeah, and and Colin Farrell's completely transformative performance as Oz Cobb is, I mean, just again mind blowing.
It's hard. It's Colin Farrell. It's
Yeah.
hard to see the Colin Farrell in there. He not just because of the makeup, which is obviously outstanding,
Yeah.
but like he is such that character.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I've always appreciated Colin Farrell.
Yeah.
But I think this series took that to another stratosphere.
Yeah, he's
you know?
awesome.
Like
He's awesome. To be able to do what he does with so much prosthetics on is even a bigger feat that
yeah.
he knocks out of the park.
Yeah.
Huge. Don't want to give away spoilers.
Yeah,
you need to watch this show.
We could literally spend 2 hours talking about this show.
Master class. You have to watch this show. But there are some huge gut punches,
Yeah.
big twists. I mean, perfect. It's really good.
It's really
good.
it's like I'm watching the show and I'm saying, I dare you to make the wrong move. I dare you to make a misstep in this show. I dare you. Like, nope.
No, we're not gonna.
Not gonna do
Perfectly
it.
well written.
Not gonna do
They
it.
knew that they knew where they wanted to get to, and they knocked it absolutely
Yeah.
out of the park.
It is perfect. I will say perfect. I will say perfect.
I agree.
All right, Rob, we are done with High Noon, and it is high time we finish up this conversation. But our listening audience is not finished. We have some important things that they need or can do.
That's right. We can't do this alone.
No, we tried.
Like
It
Will
didn't work.
Kane, you got to help out.
No, yes, we need you guys in the audience to like the podcast, subscribe to the podcast, review the podcast. If you leave us a 5-star review, we will read it live on air someday.
Someday.
And email the podcast. You can email us at carrayrob@gmail.com. Email us. We'll talk to you.
Sure, if you got some kind of interesting question, we'll definitely try to answer that.
You want
during
us to
an
settle a
episode.
debate for you? Let us know. We'll do it.
Absolutely. If there's a comment section on whatever platform you are listening to us on, by all means, let us know what you thought of High Noon. Is it the most un-American thing you've ever seen? Is it the most American thing you've ever seen? Is
Very
John
interested to
Wayne
find that
right?
out.
We just want to know. We will actually be back next week.
Next week.
Next week.
Oh, yeah.
With a new episode of our new podcast, Hello Movies, My Old Friend,
Yep.
and this one's a special one.
Yes, this is the movie that made us start the new podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is Big Man on Campus.
Absolute
so
treasure.
if you have not seen Big Man on Campus, do it before then, because not only is it a great movie,
we think.
well, it was a great movie. I should say, it was a great movie. That's
Yeah.
fair.
That's
it was
part
a
of
great movie.
Yeah.
We're going to find out if it's still a great movie.
That's part of what the new podcast
Yeah,
is about.
we will
Seeing
see.
if the things we think we
We will
love, we
see.
still love.
Exactly. So you're going to want to find out with us. But then we will be back in 2 weeks
Yeah.
with another episode of Say Hello to My Little Film, and it will be back to me.
You'll be presenting the movie.
Yep, we're almost to the end of the year, man.
Oh my gosh.
I know, it's crazy. So you're definitely not going to want to miss that, because I got a great episode. So yeah, definitely don't miss that. But until then, this is Car Ray Rob.
Where I'm Ray.
And I'm Rob. And remember, be defined by the films you love, not the ones you hate.
Hey there, it'll be just a little while till Ray and Rob spit their spittle. Come on, check out of the hospital. So grab some of your best peanut brittle. This will be a darn good transmittal. And say hello to my little film.
All right, everybody, before you go, I want to give you a little stinger for what my episode is going to be in a couple of weeks, and that is going to be the 1978 thriller The Silent Partner. Stars Elliot Gould, Christopher Plummer, Susanna York. It is a fantastic film written by Curtis Hanson. It is one of my favorite theater experiences I've ever had. It is a great film. I can't wait to show it to Ray. I can't wait for all of you to watch it. So definitely do that, and we will see you in 2 weeks, and be ready to roll.